Hello everyone and welcome to a new video from Your Overwatch. I'm Eddie the Chump and today we're going to talk about Ashe and McCree, the meta relationship between the two and how, in my opinion at least, Ashe will soon take over as the medium range hitscan DPS of choice. Now before we start the meta discussion, I just want to acknowledge that in light of McCree's recent PTR buffs, he's not going to totally disappear. His stun is still very powerful within its value range. There are going to be times where McCree is the right choice, but I guess the theme of the video is that Ashe will come to represent a much better choice for medium range hitscan players overall, as her kit allows her a measure of dexterity that McCree just doesn't have. The first part of that fluid dexterity has to do with their comparative movement abilities, so let's jump straight in. Coach gun versus combat role. Right, so Ashe and McCree don't have direct analogues, but I think it's constructive to talk about what both of these tools allow the heroes to do. McCree's role is only nominally a movement ability. It's multi-directional, sure, but it's very short and ground-based. Using it to back off a diving Winston and create space for yourself and reload at the same time can for sure be useful, but most players use it to get that reload. It's not that great as a dodge or evade ability, and it can't take McCree to advantageous spots like high ground. Its cooldown is now shorter at 6 seconds, which is good, but its application is limited. Ashe's coach gun, however, is a completely different story. It's simultaneously a boop, a keep away tool, and a mobility option. Oh, and it does pack a 90 damage punch when right up close. Its cooldown is longer than rolls at 10 seconds, but the sheer amount of freedom it creates for Ashe is much more telling. As a defensive tool, it's more efficient. That diving Winston I mentioned earlier, Coach Gun can stuff that pretty easily, and McCree's mortal enemy, gameplay-wise at least, D.Va, is much less scary as Ashe because of it. What can McCree's role do against, say, a Genji Blade ultimate? Not a lot. Coach Gun, though, knocks you and the Genji backwards, creating room for a much easier damage follow-up. This is to say nothing of using the Coach Gun to put Ashe in places that she can really wreak havoc from. Ashe can fight from the floor 1 second, and then the next, she's firing from a high ground angle. This creates opportunities for her to circumvent one of McCree's worst enemies, lots of shielding in his way, and set up much easier shots for herself. Playing McCree in the range you're supposed to, in order to get the most out of him and his weapon with FLASHBANG, necessitates you be within a certain range of your opponents. You can manually take high ground if there is any available, but you have to traverse that distance on foot, which is slow. Ashe is slow too, but every 10 seconds she has the capacity to rapidly shift her positioning vertically, which means an Ashe player gets to decide where to fight or take a duel far more often than McCree does. Think of Ashe as a character who has the freedom to fight from McCree's ideal spots or a lot of widows. That's insanely powerful, and Coach Gun is the reason for that, aside from all the other things it does for her. Consider the time and space both characters have to get in their damage. McCree has to spend a lot of time shooting shields until there's a gap or a flanker turns up. Those gaps in shielding are usually very small, even if you create it yourself by flashbanging over a Ryan shield, for example. This means McCree has to fight front to back a lot of the time and seize any chances he gets. With such small opportunity windows, there's an incredible amount of mechanical pressure to hit successive hard shots to gain any traction. The closer you are to a target, the bigger their model, but the faster they move. So McCree has a combat flow of shooting shields, oh there's a gap, 2-tap something quickly with very hard shots, oh, and back to shooting shields. Comparatively, Ashe can do that McCree job too, but from a safer distance because of a longer range fall off, and she can decide, no, enough of this, vertical flank, and there's the Ana and Zen for me to erase. Mobility in general functions as a way for a player to impose their will on the proceedings. Ashe simply gets to do that more than McCree does. And we haven't even spoken about TNT yet. Flashbang versus TNT. Alright. Flashbang is a very sharp ability. It can result in an insta-kill on squishies and the effective death of large targets that want to dive into your position, like say a Hammond, if the follow-up is good enough. It's also one of the best answers to Doomfist 2, and it can stuff ults like Earthshatter if the Rhine isn't bubbled. It's strong, and that's why its cooldown is long. But let's think about where you have to be to apply that edge. Its range is tiny, 5 meters with a 2 meter radius. At most, that's 6 meters away from your model. I don't know about you, but that sounds very dangerous to me. Huge if you hit it, devastating if you whiff or if it's blocked. That's another factor too. Not only does McCree have to be in the mix to use it, which can get him killed quite easily, but it's also been in the game so long, players are very accustomed to learning how to outplay the stun. Any top level Tracer or Genji player worth their salt would often bait and avoid it, which left the McCree in a pretty rough spot. Even if he did hit a Tracer, say, the stun window is short and the one-tap follow-up shot is not always easy if you or your opponent is being booped around, a side effect of playing in the range where brawl is occurring. Ashe doesn't need a flashbang to one-tap a Tracer, or a Mercy damage amp. She just can if she's aiming down sight. Admittedly, she has to do that in a hard duel, but if she hits that difficult shot, it's rip, in a similar way to say Hanzo matches up. McCree's stun represents his biggest opportunity to get easy shots in, but they can not even be that easy in the mess of a fight. The rest of the time, he's exceptionally demanding to play. Ashe gets rewarded for hitting those hard shots too, arguably more than McCree does, especially if she does have that Mercy amp. One taps aplenty can occur then, but she also gets to set up easy ones for herself as well. Coach Gun is a big part of that, as we've said, but so is TNT. Now TNT isn't as severe as Flashbang, but it can be used in many more ways to get value, and its range is potentially huge. Firstly, it can be thrown over shields to hit targets behind them a little bit easier, as its AoE is much larger, and secondly, it forces the enemy to react to it, either by them changing their shape to avoid it, pushing them back, or by draining healing resources. Additionally, if you have Coach Gun flanked and hit a backline target with it, maybe more than one perhaps, your follow-up window to kill them is really forgiving. You can use TNT and possibly only need to hit one shot each to kill them, and if multiple people are burning, Ashe can really clean up. McCree hardly ever gets that kind of window. For starters, it's much harder for him to be at the right angle to make that play in the first place. This is by no means the only ways of using TNT either. I've seen Effect and other top Ashe players TNT at their own feet when dove by a tank or a flanker, only to Coach Gun that TNT, take the damage onto themselves and win the duel in the air when they're both burning. That's obviously risky, but it's a play you can make if your healers are switched on. It's also good if your enemies are trying to kite and evade. Sometimes just a swift TNT lobbed at them can kill them outright if they're low and you hit the clutch detonate shot, even if you can't actually see them. Oddly, its cooldown is exactly the same as Flashbang, but in my experience, it feels much shorter, and I think I know the reason why. TNT can be used right at the start of a fight to get some free easy damage and manipulate enemy spacing from any range you choose really, then by the time the mid-fight is really happening, it's back and you get to use it again. Flashbang is only relevant within specific range parameters, which you might not even reach until much later. This makes it feel much more do or die. Like McCree is in 8 Mile and he has to grab his one shot, one opportunity, or it's all over. Ashe just gets to do what she wants because her kit allows her to be so much more fluid. Deny space, take space, be a sniper, get mid-range burst in. She can do it all if the player is mechanically capable enough. And that's something we're going to talk about next. Ammo and ultimates. So McCree shoots marginally faster, but does less damage at a smaller effective range. He has more uptime than Ashe does as well, with his reload being much quicker. And those should be strengths, but here's what I think makes the difference. Sure, when empty, Ashe can wait a long time out of the fight to reload, which is bad. But when she does have ammo, simply having more available shots means she is much less likely to run out at a crucial time. It's quite common for a McCree to be speculatively shooting and then get a tiny window to actually kill something, as we've discussed. Well, that might leave him with say 3 shots to get the job done. So either hit a 2-tap with perfect precision and a bullet to spare, or not miss a single bullet for a 3 shot before having to reload. Combat roll can help you here, and now it's buffed, you'll have even better uptime, but it's still a bit of a weakness for him. 6 shots is not a lot to play with, and how Overwatch plays now, where you have to get your damage value off as close to instantly as possible, McCree can feel very unforgiving. Ashe doesn't feel that way. You're either in a position to shoot for a long time, or you're not. So with proper control, and maybe even cancelling your reload at times, you almost always have enough ammo to get the job done in one go, which is very important. If you kill 3 things one after another, you've got time for that reload. If you have to reload much more often, you might not get to kill those 3 things. In fact, you probably won't. Oh, I did say this earlier, but here's a good time to remind you, Ashe and Mercy amp equals 1 tap on squishies, and you have 12 bullets to do that with. McCree can't 1 tap a 200 health enemy outside of his ult ever. And that feels like a good time to segue into their comparative ult value. Now, the meme is that Deadeye is a respawn button, and if used badly and inconsiderately, it can definitely be that. But at the top level, pros are pretty good with it, or at least pretty good at staying alive through its use and securing some frags with it. Again, it's a severe ability. Use it, get frags, or die almost instantly. Bob, by comparison, is incredibly safe for a DPS ult. It puts Ashe in no jeopardy whatsoever. It can be countered by shield placement pretty easily for sure, but the whole time Bob is on the map, your team is technically up in numbers, and you as the Ashe player are free to generate another angle with your own influence. The tech and how to use it will be developed in time. The fact he knocks whoever he hits into the air is an area not yet optimized, for example, but at the very least he can be deployed to protect yourself or your team in a way that doesn't instantly kill you. Stuffing him against walls or on carts can really mess with teams looking to use their own ults against you. A Genji will be forced to use deflect against a Bob if you're standing next to him and Genji is trying to blade you. Bob is like a giant Torb turret. Place him somewhere nasty and he'll shoot all the things. A Deadeye in some of those contexts can be outplayed in so many ways I don't have time to list them all. So the point of this meta discussion isn't to say McCree is a bad hero without use. That's not true. But Ashe is simply freer to make plays in a variety of ways McCree is not, and that puts her in the go-to medium range hitscan slot for me. She's harder to punish, is more forgiving to use, and has more options open to her. Expect to see a lot of her and less McCree in the coming months. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a rating. If you never want to miss another video of ours again, please click the bell icon next to the subscribe button on our channel to join the notification squad. You'll be in great company. And finally, please follow the Your Overwatch Twitter. It's where you can find updates about new videos and other cool stuff. I've been Eddie the Chump, and until next time.